The beach is a place for fun and all sorts of good times, until it isn't. I imagine that opening being more like a Dateline NBC special. But seriously, this next movie will make you think twice about stepping 1 foot onto the beach. This is 2015's The Sand. Spoiler alert, while I might be giving you my opinion on the film, that's no substitute for watching it for yourself. Links to the film are in the description. And for those of you that need to hear this is just a movie. All stunts are for the sake of story and shouldn't be attempted on your own. Viewer discretion is advised. We start out on the beach, and we see that a bunch of co-eds are enjoying themselves at an all-nighter party on the beach. Someone records the whole thing, and they go to interview Kaylee, who isn't enjoying herself as much as everyone else. Just then, Jonah shows up and kisses Chanda in his sports car, and Kaylee decides that she's going to drink now. Later, Mitch makes his rounds, and he tells everyone that they have to follow the rule he put out. Everyone has to surrender their phones. Everyone aside from the cameraman, of course. Eventually, some of the guys find a giant, gooey ball, and they decide to bring it by the fire. Well, that's their first problem right there. If you find something that looks like that gooey mess anywhere, you don't bring it closer to people. If anything, you move the party about a mile down the coastline. The night goes on, and drama seems to follow as Mitch makes a move on Kaylee, who isn't happy about Jonah and his shenanigans. Jonah continues to be the life of the party, and he starts making out with Ronnie too. Then they decide to take the cameraman's camera. In the morning, some of the partiers are still on the beach, and they wake up one by one. Kaylee wakes up by Mitch first, and she walks out of the lifeguard post to see the others sleeping in the convertible. Soon, Jonah and the others wake up, and they spot Kaylee watching them sleep. Kaylee tells Mitch that she just wants to go home, and Chanda starts making out with Jonah. Kaylee looks out over the beach, and she notices that the gooey ball is cracked open. She sees that the sleeping bags are empty all over the sand, and Chanda tries to call out to another friend, Marcia, who's asleep on the picnic table. Just then, Kaylee watches as a bird gets eaten by the sand, and she tries to stop Marcia from touching the sand. Marcia doesn't listen though, and the second she touches the sand, she's stuck. The others watch as she struggles, and Vance decides that he's going to run and help her. He only makes it a few steps before he gets stuck to the sand too. How about we don't run into the sand now? You'd think that this would be enough to keep people from doing that, but Jonah goes to run on the sand too. The only reason he doesn't is because Chanda stops him. Can already tell that these aren't the brightest college students in the world. Within seconds, Vance is sucked into the sand, and the others try to come up with reasons to explain what they just saw. Their best idea is that it's the government. Oil chemicals did that. When Jonah tells them that the cell phones are in the trunk, everyone starts to hate Mitch for making them give them up in the first place. When Jonah goes to start the car, they find out the battery's dead because of him keeping the lights on all night. Kaylee goes to test the sand, and she shows Mitch that there are actually tendrils that are reaching out of the sand to try and grab her. While she's doing her science experiment, Gilbert wakes up to find himself stuck in a fire barrel. He tries to free himself, but everyone tells him that he has to just stay there. Honestly. After they convince Gilbert to sit tight, like he has a choice, Kaylee and Mitch go inside the tower to try and think things through. Meanwhile, Chanda notices that Jonah's looking after Kaylee like he still has feelings for her, and she tells him to let Kaylee go. What they don't see is that the tendrils are reaching out for the car tires. Kaylee and Mitch drink some of the vodka from the night before, and Ronnie starts writing a note for her mother. Time passes, and Gilbert really starts to feel the heat and the pressure from the trash can. The group waits and waits, but no one comes by. Finally, Kaylee asks Mitch what happened the night before. Mitch tells her that they just walked on the beach, talked, and crashed in the tower. But she's wondering more about any strange reasons why the sand wants to eat them now. Mitch comes across a bottle of sunscreen, and Kaylee tosses it to the car for the others to use. She tries to ask him if they noticed anything the night before, but they soon realize that everyone else had crashed out on the beach. Now that they realize that everyone's dead, their situation really starts to get to them. Suddenly, Gilbert gets impatient again, and Jonah tosses the sunblock to him. Then Kaylee notices that the gooey thing from the night before is cracked open. Ronnie pieces things together, and she guesses that it was some sort of egg. Now Gilbert really starts to panic, but Kaylee tries to rationalize the size of whatever hatched. She runs inside to grab a pack of hot dogs, and she tosses one out into the sand. The tendrils suck it down. Eventually, they throw one so far that it lands safely. So now they've established how big the creature is underneath the sand, but they just threw out all of their food. It's so hot they could have cooked the hot dogs on the hood of the car or even on Gilbert's head. Some of the group thinks that it isn't too far to make it, but others are thinking that they should just sit still and wait for someone to finally show up. Ronnie, on the other hand, seems to be giving up completely. She hasn't noticed any other people, any boats, any cars, or any planes. and she doesn't think that anyone's coming for them. Jonah decides to try and cross the sand, so he uses 2 surfboards to make himself a walkway. After making it so far out, he decides to stop to squash some drama with Kaylee. This is not the time for this, just get off the killer sand. And then you can shout your insults back to the others. Priorities, guys! Just as Jonah makes it to a picnic table, the tendrils start working to walk the surfboards away from the table, and Jonah hangs across the gap as best as he can. After the tendrils reach up and start eating at him, he uses one last burst of energy to get himself onto the table. He tells the others that it hurts so bad, and Ronnie concludes that the tendrils must be poisonous. Suddenly, Jonah realizes that he's able to stand where the fire was, and he stands there to eat a banana he found at the table. Then, the banana starts to ooze out of his stomach wounds, and Kaylee tells him to keep looking through the bag since he's over there. Once he goes through it, he finds drinks that he passes to Ronnie, Gilbert, and Mitch. When he throws the one to Mitch, his wounds start to pop, and he throws the drink into the sand. Once Jonah lies back on the table, the others notice that the tendrils are moving the surfboards further away from Jonah. Then Kaylee notices that the tendrils are growing up the tires of the car, and she decides that they need to act fast. Because there hasn't been any need to hurry up until now, of course. Kaylee might have come across as the leader that lights a fire under everyone else, but Ronnie is the secret leader here. Her and Gilbert should have been stuck in the tower instead. They would have been back at the college dorms by now. When they decide to go for the phones in the trunk, Ronnie tells them that she thinks she can stand on the bumper and grab them. So they lay a towel on the hot trunk, and she climbs out to the edge. For a moment, it seems to work, but when she goes to open the trunk, it hits her shin. Chanda tells her to use the towel and lean back, and she promises to hold the towel tight. Ronnie trusts her, and Mitch goes to get the rescue hook from the tower. Now that Ronnie has the hook to hold onto, she lets go of Chanda and opens the trunk. She stands there celebrating, but they don't see a car pulling up. As the car pulls up, he honks the horn, and it startles them so much that Ronnie falls and closes her hand in the trunk. Oh, I cringed there. I've cringed a couple of times for the wrong reasons, but that moment really made me feel it. Her blood-curdling scream really helped you feel it too. The guard tells them that they shouldn't be there since the beach is closed, and everyone else tells him to stay in his car and call for help. He thinks that all of them are on drugs, and he gets out. The tendrils don't seem to be able to get him, and he walks around to investigate the scene. He claims that this is definitely the weirdest day on the beach in 20 years, and he tries to make Mitch and Kaylee come down out of the lifeguard stand. When he drops his keys, he goes to grab them, but the sand grabs his hand. He uses pepper spray on the hand, but by the time he does that, the sand has already eaten his arm. He falls down onto the sand, and the tendrils eat away at his body as it pulls him under the sand. Kaylee manages to reach his bottle of pepper spray before he's gone, though. That pepper spray is not enough to make it to safety. Apparently, it was the rubber boots that kept them safe. Mitch grabs some diving flippers and he puts them on. He tells the others his plan, and everyone but Kaylee seems to think it's a good idea. Chanda throws him some towels from the car, but he leans too far to catch one of them, and he falls off. The sand immediately grabs him, and Kaylee tries to comfort him as the tendrils eat him from the inside out. The tendrils start moving the stair rail farther away, but Kaylee gets Chanda to grab it. Then she throws another one to her. Then Kaylee decides to jump into the car from the tower. Once there, Kaylee punches Chanda for screwing Jonah, and the drama's all over. Her next step is to help Ronnie pull her fingers out of the trunk, and they lay her down in the back seat. Next, they turned their attention to Gilbert, who has turned himself around in the barrel. In doing so, he started to bleed all over the can. I'd be surprised if he wasn't twisting his lower body off of his upper body, like a backwards can opener. He might have been better off just sitting absolutely still. Chanda makes a walking bridge out of the stair rails, and she gets to the table where Jonah is. Kaylee goes next, but then Gilbert calls out that he cut his belly at some point, and he's bleeding inside the barrel. Once Kaylee makes it to Jonah, Ronnie takes her turn, but she falls into the sand and is eaten just like the others. Back at the barrel, the tendrils start climbing up the barrel, and they look at the blood that's dripping down. Chanda wraps a towel and a cloth bag around her feet, and she jumps off and runs to the cop's car where she hops on the hood. Suddenly, Gilbert feels something inside the can, and he screams out in terror as he gets eaten from inside the can. Giant tentacles reach up and pull him down in one fluid motion. Not Gilbert! The only comedy relief left is the lack of common sense the other three have. Oh! Chanda gets knocked out because she's still standing on the hood of the car when one of the tentacles shakes it. So she's a lightweight and not too bright. This is just a special game of The Floor is Lava Beach Edition. Treat it as such, Don't stand on the edge of things. You've seen enough people die from that exact thing. Chanda is literally unconscious until nighttime, and she wakes up to Kaylee calling out her name. Chanda crawls around the car, and she comes across an inflatable raft on the roof. She pulls the rope and blows it up beside the car. Chanda hops in and Kaylee gets Jonah up to transfer him to the car. Once they're all inside, the ground rumbles as a giant, glowing tentacle emerges from the sand, and Kaylee falls back onto the raft. She hops on top of the car, and she goes for one of the gasoline cans on the back. She pours gas all around the car, and she uses the matches in her pockets to light the giant tentacle on fire. Chanda gets Kaylee into the car, and the tentacle tries to open the door. Oh my god, it's smart! It's like watching the velociraptors in Jurassic Park all over again. I couldn't go in my kitchen for weeks after that. Finally, the tentacles seem to give up, and everyone takes a second to breathe. They've made it. By the next morning, Jonah's dead in the passenger seat still, and a random surfer comes across the car as the girls sleep. He knocks on the window, and Kaylee opens up the door. After seeing him stand safely on the beach, she concludes that the creature under the sand is gone, and she walks on the sand. Then Chanda comes out and stands with them. What's even better is that when the girls walk away, we can see the outline of the creature's reach. Then we see the creature's made its way to the water, and it's making its way to a pier. Then, the credits roll. Okay, yes, the characters are frustratingly childish in handling the drama while in the middle of a creature feature, but you've got to admit that it has the charm of those early 2000s horror movies. Give it a shot. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more like this one. Comment what you think I should watch next, and I'll see you in the next video.